2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but tonight we are starting out a new month. Did we call this month anything theme-wise?
Well, it's Halloween.
Oh, Halloween! So it's come upon the creepy month that everyone has waited for because every day is Halloween to us. But we started with a film that I guess came across the broadcasting waves, and Brandon heard about it. So why don't you tell us what movie or film we are going to be discussing tonight?
So we're doing the 2013 film, the WNUF Halloween special. This was directed by Chris LaMartina, James Ranscome, and Shawn, Jone. Now, this is a film that is supposed to simulate a videotape they found in the basement of a Halloween special broadcast in the 80s where a reporter checks in on a haunted house on Halloween night where a murder took place. So, this was a first for several of y'all, but I know it wasn't a first for one of y'all, so we'll start with him. So, Jake, tell us about your impressions of the WNUF Halloween special.
Well, yeah, you know darn well this wasn't a first because you showed it to me, 3-4 years ago, maybe a little longer.
Yeah, me and Ken both liked it, so we were...
Yeah. And wasn't it might have been almost like a Halloween viewing. I can't remember. But it was, it was a very interesting movie. I use the term movie somewhat loosely, but it certainly doesn't play like a movie. Let's put it that way. But that is part of the movie's appeal. It does as someone who was an older child in the late 80s, I can absolutely say, maybe not. I don't want to say an older child. It might make me sound older than I am, but as a child of the 80s who was very definitely watching television when this came out and did occasionally watch stuff later in the evening, probably sitting with my folks watching. I know I watched a lot of Cheers when I was younger, Matlock, things like that. I'd watch with my folks. And on a rare occasion, would sit and watch the news. I definitely can say that this struck an extremely nostalgic chord for me. And as someone who was familiar with the concept of taping things on VHS and going back and hopefully rewatching them, this absolutely looks and feels like someone recorded poorly a TV special, and they even started it early and accidentally got the news by mistake or maybe intentionally. I don't know. There are just a couple of parts where that illusion falls apart. The way that there is a bit of an epilogue at the end kind of...
No, the epilogue is part of the murder mystery at the end.
Yes, but it's about a week later. If this is supposed to be a recording, it kind of destroys that idea by having an epilogue. But other than that, it does a really damn good job of doing the Don Store knockoff version of a late 80s holiday special. Complete with commercials. And in fact, the commercials are one of the best parts. They do such a good job of capturing the commercials. And we even get the simulation, not just of this being a found video, but someone watching a found video by them fast forwarding through certain parts. It's really fun. I friggin' loathe the guy doing this special. Frank Stewart is a fucking asshole. But I think he plays it well. The only other, and I don't like what happens to the cat.
Yeah,
but the only real criticism I have about the movie as a movie is that certain people are very clearly overacting their roles. A couple of people they interview for news segments, if they had managed to make sure that all the people they interviewed gave perfectly realistic, relatable performances and felt like people off the street, it would have almost been a perfect movie. But the fact that some of those people overact their parts, it makes it a little cheesier than it had to be. And when we get, well, I've got comments on the end. When we get to the end, we'll talk about that. But overall, though, I was very impressed by the movie the first time I saw it. And I immediately wanted to find out how I could get it, but it is not an easy movie to get. So that was disappointing.
They sell it on their website.
But isn't it Vinegar Syndrome?
No, well, there is a Vinegar Syndrome version, which is out of print. But they do sell a Blu-ray of it on their website. I think I included it in our chat. It also has the sequel on sale there too, which is Out There Halloween Tape. Which, by the way, that one is going to have a Blu-ray re-release through Terracotta.
Okay, I might have to give a look into that, but. At any rate,
you mean Terra Films or
no? It's Terracotta, I believe, is the one. Let me see. Terracotta. Out There Halloween Tape. Google is such a great friend.
Yeah.
Or is it? Well, one of those is getting it. I thought it was Terracotta that was doing it, but it's one of those. It's one of those ones is doing a Blu-ray version of that.
Okay.
I know that because I have it pre-ordered.
Right.
But they do have it right now. Grindhouse Video is also. Actually, I think Grindhouse Video is the one that's doing this one. I was thinking Terracotta for a different reason. So Grindhouse Video is doing a release for a Blu-ray version of it, and it is low stock right now.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to get that because that's expensive. But
you
can get the DVD, or you can get the DVD on their site without.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I was under the impression that it was basically a rather expensive one. But anyway. So this, of course, was the second viewing for me, and I feel like it holds up pretty well. It's a good. Oh wait, the Out There Mega Halloween. That was the sequel.
Yep.
How did I not realize that? Okay, we watched that. I watched that last year, right?
Not with me because I've only watched it once.
I feel like I did though. I know that was one of your nominees for the Versus Awards. It was good times.
That one reflected the 90s as this one did the 80s.
Right. Okay. I don't think I realized that connection. Anyway. So yeah, this was the second viewing, and I have to say I feel like it holds up pretty well. I honestly can't say whether the dial shifted strongly one way or the other for me. Maybe I was more impressed the first time because of the novelty of it. But Oh yeah, I think it holds up pretty well on second viewing. Yeah. So
I don't know why, but I swear that the woman on the news looks demonic because of her eyes, the way that deteriorated tape looked.
I gotta say, you talking about the producer or the anchor that we're looking at?
The anchor that we're looking at.
Did anyone else think that her hat was excessively wobbly? I felt like every time her head moved at all, the hat moved 5 times more.
I guess if I had watched it a second time, which I probably will never watch a second time.
Yeah, I noticed it bobbing around too.
I wasn't really looking at her hat. I was just trying to watch the movie.
I don't know if I noticed it the first time, but this time I was like, every time she talked and she was moving her head around, I'm like, that is a very distracting hat.
The way she
yeah. And I was saying before, like, that some of the people, their acting was a little over.
Dave?
You cut out there on my end.
Sorry. The way that the news anchor lady spoke to me sounded a little bit like Elaine Fairchild from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Okay. Mr. Rogers was not something that came to mind, but now. But I was going to say real quick, and then I'll pass it on. I said that some of the people on the street and whatever, I did not care for some of the performances. The religious fanatic, for example, was way over the top. Way over the top. But the anchors were over the top in a good way. Like, they were 100% believable as local news anchors. And so I give them props for that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So, Tammy, was this your first time with the WNUF Halloween tape?
Yes.
And did this feel familiar to you?
It was my first time. It was not familiar to me at all. And I do have to agree, I guess, with David that I'm not interested in watching it again either. I don't know what it was. It didn't do a thing for me. It was.
Did it even make you feel like you were watching a special from the 80s?
No. It made me feel like
the atmosphere of the 80s?
No, it made me feel like somebody was screwing around with the tape and they didn't know what they were doing.
Okay.
It was like, wow, geez, I recorded a lot better than that. So sorry, but I really did not get into it at all. It's just, yeah.
Well, hey, not every movie is for everybody. Lord knows I've seen a number on here that I was like, so no worries.
Indeed.
Okay.
How about you, Dave?
What a load of shit. I am sorry, but okay. I get what they were trying to do here. I really do. It's got the look of like something that you would have found like in some basement somewhere, because but that's something anyone can do with an editing tool, you know.
Well, they did more than basic stuff, but we'll talk about
that.
They
did more than basic stuff. They did some stuff on the VHS and did some rewind crap, which does look cool. But I do think that the anchors were like the best actors. I do think that they were heavily somewhat mimicking the Amityville horror story with the Weber House thing. They were also mimicking Ed and Lorraine Warren in a sense, with a couple of married.
It was not subtle.
Yeah,
No.
And the psychic cat.
And
that was different. Yep.
Yeah, tell me about it. But I'm sorry. I liked one commercial out of the whole thing, and that was the one where they played Spin the Bottle and they had the different drugs, and then it was like one of those.
Game over.
Yeah,
really like in your face.
It was just.
So funny.
I like the creepiness, and I like the fact that I would have loved to have seen that on TV myself. But the rest of the infomercials, they would have been commercials that I would have fast forwarded through if I could at any given point in time. These are commercials that.
Well, they're important for kind of setting the feel of it, because this is meant to be watched on a VHS tape, like preferably copied over a few times so that it's like extra grainy. So you're supposed to be able to sell that this was a real broadcast that happened. And commercials did used to really suck like that. Like that was actually very authentic.
Yeah.
I get it, and
I as an experiment, like I played a few for like a relative in their 60s. They said that they were that they all looked right, but they caught one thing wrong. So at one point, one of the commercials mentioned a phone number for some business in Iowa. Apparently, they used the wrong zip code for that time period, and somehow this relative knew that. And I was like, well, if that's the only mistake they made, then hey, hell yeah.
So we got several that say that it does feel that it did have commercials and stuff that felt like the 80s, and one that says that none of it felt anything like the 80s. So that's not too bad.
Yeah.
As a curiosity, I watched some old toy commercials a while ago, and those the general vibe of those like felt pretty matching. I'm just old enough to remember a little bit of TV in that time period.
And I like some of those older, like 80s, 90s TV commercials. I didn't like much of these. So I get what they were trying to do. I respect what they were trying to do, but the commercials weren't really doing it for me nostalgia wise. I do give them credit for mimicking some of the Amityville horror vibes with the Ed and Lorraine look-alike, people. And I'm not too stupid to realize that they use some last names that are connected to some independent horror people. Like in one of them, one said Ted Sheets. Well, I know Todd Sheets is an independent film director, and he's very well known. They also use Polonia, which we know the Polonia brothers have put out many different horror films. And I did recognize George Stober as an actor that was in here, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah, these guys did travel in those circles, though I'll admit they found some success where some of them did not, especially in this one.
And the producer that was in the van, her last name was Stanza. Well, there is a independent horror film director named Eric Stanza. So I wonder if some of these last names were kind of tributing to those particular independent
not just that. I mean, you do have a number of horror references generally in the names. A good example being Barlow being a reference to
Barlow, definitely.
I mean, Dandridge from
movie coming out that's came out recently.
Well,
Right.
and the political ads kind of reminds me of the political atmosphere of today a little bit.
Well, that hasn't changed.
Well, and
war never changes.
Well, and there you have Barlow.
that are coming out.
Well, the ads I think were Barlow and Dandridge were your competitors, and they're both named after vampires. I mean, that's interesting.
Actually, that is funny. Anything else on your first impression, Dave?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's too corny, and just if it was edited well, let's just put it that way. I did not like it. I will say that it probably isn't for me. I will probably view the second one and probably have the same. I'm neutral because I like certain aspects of it. I know that some of it was done on actual VHS because they had to rewind it just to do that effect.
Now, the second one's more about aliens and cults. It definitely focuses on the Hale Bop incident and the gate of, what was it? Gates of Heaven, Gates of something like that.
Heaven's Gate cult.
Heaven's Gate.
I haven't gotten to see that yet, so I gotta hunt that down. That was something that would have been a day one buy for me if things had been going better.
And for the and as far as things go, on the 90s, Grindhouse Films is doing a Blu-ray release of that one, and also the film is on sale on their website, on the filmmaker's website, and a Blu-ray version of this particular one is on there as well.
Yeah, Chris Lamantia and Jimmy George, like they've been friends of mine pretty much since I started getting into horror, when people were first talking about this as like the rad new movie coming out, and I had never seen anything like it. So I really want to specifically buy one from them when I can, which is another reason I haven't added it yet.
Why don't we go ahead and move to your first impression, Dustin?
Well, I first started really exploring horror as a genre and just watching these movies in 2012, and I think this was one of the first titles that I had started reading articles on places like Bloody Disgusting and Dread Central, and this was the first like kind of modern movie that I had a little bit of knowledge of like as it was coming out, and people were like, "Oh man, this new thing is awesome!" And so when I finally got to see it, which was kind of challenging back then, because of, well, it's a long story. But when I finally did see it, like I had never seen anything like found footage like this that was like a retro recreation. So it really impressed me because I hadn't even seen all that much found footage just at all yet. And even though the story in the news broadcast itself is a little, what's the word? Generic, maybe? Because it's like, oh yeah, we get killed by cultists at a haunted house while trying to prove it was a haunted house. Twists, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of really good memories with this, like talking with people about it, like in Facebook groups, and you know, like getting to talk to like Jimmy and Chris, and well, maybe that's a little formal, but it's so cool. And actually, when I first started doing the show, like I'm still friends with Paul Fahrenkamp, the guy who plays Frank. And I think one of the original ideas that we had for if we did an episode on this was I was going to try to see if I could get him to come on, and he was willing to do it. He was willing to be a guest, but there wasn't really time to set that up.
Probably better for him not to hear about it because then you'd have to hear Dave hate on it.
Yeah, I hear Dave's ridiculous negativity.
Sorry. There are things that I like about it, but it just.
I'm just joking with you, Dave.
I know.
Yeah.
It just.
Well, you liked Bunny the Killer thing, like
yeah. I was going to say
reduces the value of your opinion by 45%. But anyway, it's a really fun, like, quick watch too, and I try to watch it around every Halloween. So I recommend it every chance I get too. A couple of years ago, there was a really cool, I think it was through one of their like partner labels technically, but I got it through the Vinegar Syndrome site. There was a really nice Blu-ray release of it. And that's, I'm not sure what shelf I put it on. I had to do a lot of apartment rearranging recently, and a lot of stuff is kind of lost. But I remember it had a lot of pretty good extras and stuff on it. So just, this movie is just such a winner. Like I love it. Like I love the stupid commercials. I really wish that horror movie commercial they had, sarcophagus. I really wish that was a real thing because it looked sick. Anybody else remember that part? Or
Yeah. I felt like a kind of movie you would see back then.
Now that I wouldn't have minded seeing.
Like I said, the only thing I so far disagree is, but I'll say that when I get to my first impression. But yeah, anything else on first impression, Dustin?
Well, that's just kind of it. It was, I saw it maybe if I had seen it later after having had a lot more experience with horror and found footage, then maybe I would have been less impressed by it. Because sometimes it does sort of drag a little bit. Like I do like how like there's that fast forward effect for some sequences, like when commercials get repeated, because it's meant to be like 90 minutes of TV, like that you just see, and so you see at least one like repeated commercial. So I think that added some authenticity.
That local carpet store commercial, absolutely, you would see one or two just like, why am I seeing this over and over and over again? Why?
I have seen a lot of those back in the day, but I would much rather see a commercial about that buffet place that was listed down below than the carpet place.
So, well,
one time when I was watching Hooked on, I think it was AMC, there was a commercial that was literally just like, serve God, become a priest, with like chanting in the background. And that was played something like 40 times in a row for the entire commercial break. And I thought I was going insane. So stuff like that did happen.
Yeah.
Even up into the 90s.
Head on. Fly directly to the forehead.
I am still convinced Adult Swim like made that as just a prank and it was not a real product.
No, it was a real product. Because that came on before Adult Swim. I remember that because I was young enough when those commercials started.
Yeah.
Hey, but admittedly, it was a memorable product ad. Just repeat the same thing over and over again. Well, for me,
well, I mean, if you don't know they're selling a product, I feel like that dampens the effect.
Yeah.
Anyway,
supposed to dampen the effect of your headaches. But it wasn't. But from what I heard, the product actually wasn't that effective. That was more psychologically effective than it was actually effective.
That would explain why it like repeated itself 10 times. Apply to the forehead. What for? We won't say. Oh, all right.
So, well, my first experience with this actually was much later than it came out originally. It was actually when it started on Shudder, because it had a run on Shudder a few years ago, and we were trapped in for the pandemic. I know that it was either 2020 or 2021 when they showed it on Shudder, and we were looking for something interesting. And occasionally we play Shudder Roulette, which is, let's see what's new. All right, this looks interesting. We're not really feeling like paying much attention to something, so this will work. Matter of fact, that's how we found Bad Ben, except it wasn't Shudder that time. It was Amazon Prime. But both me and Kim actually really liked this film. It was one of the things that both of us agreed on, and we don't agree all the time on these. And the one of the things, of course, I disagree with is that I disagree with the thought that this is nothing like what would come out in the 80s, because I admit I was not that old in the 80s, but I watched, and I think maybe it had something to do with the fact that this would have been for those of us who watched local TV or local cable channels. Like if you were watching a lot of MTV or stuff like that back in the 80s, you wouldn't see this.
I grew up without cable. I guarantee you this is what played on network television.
That might be why, like when you were talking, like nothing like this came on in the 80s when you were watching it. But I saw stuff like this all the time as a kid. I mean, they would do like these spooky little specials around the newscast.
Yeah.
A lot of the local anchors would get involved, and it was always the cheesy commercials that would come on. The local commercials always were the cheesiest. And you could tell this is like off of a local station, and you had the local commercials like for that dentist doing the candy buyback.
Right.
And the stuff like that, and the carpet commercial mixed in with the drug PSAs and the more national stuff with the local politics in it.
See, for us, it would be the sex doctors commercials and that voodoo priestess that would tell tarot cards or something like that.
Well, that would have been a thing too, yeah.
Those were some of the commercials that I remember. I mean, the My Pillow guy, I could see coming on like in the 80s or whatnot, you know.
And you see, and probably most of your memories would probably be late 80s into the 90s.
He's kind of a throwback.
And Dave, I believe, cited the drug commercial as his favorite one. I think there were 3 of them, right? And this was
there's only one that had to spin the bottle.
Yeah, but there were like 3 different ones, and they were all really bleak and dark and depressing.
Yeah, those went well into the 90s.
Well, I was going to say this was the height of the war on drugs. This was the big time war on drugs. You know, This Is Your Brain on Drugs campaign, I think, started around this time.
Although there were definitely a lot of PSA things for drugs in the 30s and 40s too.
Right. But like I said, the war on drugs, it went into overtime. And I remember being bombarded with that stuff. So seeing 3 different ones in the span of an hour-and-a-half special, to me, that was like, oh, yeah, that would have happened.
And, I was, at the time period this would probably be mid-80s. So probably between 84 and 86. And I'll tell you right now, the TV I watched probably was not that much clearer than this. And if it was clearer for any of y'all back, well, actually, the only one probably remember TV much back then would be Tammy. It would have to be a lot richer because the TV would have to be a lot better quality because our TV was kind of a black and white up until about 83. And then we had a very old kind of ratty color TV after that. And those did not get the clearest picture. A lot of times whenever we would have to get the signal, the one thing that they didn't do that would have looked better is if it had a lot of graininess to it. Which, I don't know. Tammy, did you do TV through the the antennas? Did your family do that or was it cable? Nope. Okay.
Tammy?
We had, we had cable. And the more I think about it, like my dad did like to tape a lot of TV. And so he usually tried to avoid commercials, but some of his old tapes that I can remember seeing like as a teenager were also kind of like this too. Because something was kind of pecking at me in my mind. It's like, there's something else that this was like, and I think that's what my memory was trying to like tell me.
Because that's the thing is that there's a lot of different things that would come on cable, and cable was a differently accessed experience, but you still had some of the local stations on cable. I could not say what cable's experience was like in the 80s because we didn't get cable where I lived. I lived out in the middle of nowhere. Cable didn't actually go far out to where we lived. Not until the late 90s did cable come out our way. My father got a satellite dish in the late 80s, which is how I got access to like Nickelodeon and stuff after that. But still, I loved the looking at this stuff because it did remind me a lot of some of the nostalgia that I had for the time period.
That you have growing up.
It was actually very similar to some of the stuff I had growing up. Like I say, a lot of the local channels and stuff like that. And we had I had a relative that was a news anchor for one of the local stations. And we'd always tune in. We'd watch Hee Haw. But it tells you how old that is. And how country.
Remember what that was, yeah.
That's Southern country.
I remember Hee Haw.
Yes,
Yeah, I saw it too.
Well, one of the things I was going to ask you, Tammy, is did y'all have an antenna during the 80s or did y'all do cable?
Always had antennas. I didn't
I remember we had to get out and
didn't have any cable until I was old enough to get to get my own.
Because I remember you had to like twist the thing and all that. Yeah. But
most of the stuff I watched in the 80s is most of it I ended up watching when I was by my great grandparents because I didn't watch TV with my mom too much, and she liked all them nuts, milk and crust and all that crap, you know.
And it would make sense though why you wouldn't have watched some of this stuff because I mean if you were avoiding that kind of experience, you probably wouldn't have gotten a lot of it. I would watch a lot of it.
Magnum, I watched like Magnum PI and Knight Rider and stuff like that over by my great grandparents, and then I would do I guess they call it like shock theater now, but the late night when they would show the old horror movies, you know.
Yeah, right before they turn on the national anthem at the night.
Yep, and I'd watch Twilight Zone and all that stuff. Yeah, I will.
You know how I feel old is when I know that they actually used to shut TV off at the end of the day.
Yeah, I remember that too.
But
yeah, I didn't. Usually like during the week I would be by my mom. On the weekends, I would be by my great grandparents, so that's when I got to watch everything.
So this is the third or fourth time I've watched this. Because the first time I watched it, I was impressed because I'd never seen anything quite like it. Then I had to show everybody else. Because that's how it is. When I see something I like, I want to share that experience with my friends. Because then, if any one or two of the friends actually gets the same spark, I'm like, yes, I shared it and it was successful.
Oh, my friends.
Oh, my friends. But this one was one that just brought me back a lot to when I was with my grandfather watching Hee Haw and the nightly news on Channel 13 when I was younger. I was just a little kid. And I also like how a lot of it, if you look at it, after the second or third watching, I could tell that there was a lot of interconnectedness to it. That if you looked at some of the ads and some of the news stories, all of it did connect to the main story at the end. And I kind of like that, how the subtleness of it. And the more you got, the more you picked up. But any case, let's get moving through. So, of course, we start off with this tape being inserted like, you would any type of tape. And then them picking up with the news with that, do, 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 do. As they're sitting there in their fancy Halloween costumes with the woman looking creepy as heck in that picture, with her very bright teeth and really dark eyes as they report the news. And there's a couple of stories that are of note. One, of course, they talk about the dentist that's giving Halloween candy, not Halloween candy, is giving money for every pound of Halloween candy is brought in. And I'll admit, I'd have been thinking about that. I'd have just turned in the crap candy, though. No Reese's. If somebody gave me Reese's or Snickers or something like that, they wouldn't be getting that. But all
Yeah,
the
that's
other stuff, like Smarties and stuff, yeah, I turn that in for my
Candy corn, yeah, definitely.
Oh, I love candy corn. But something like I've never been a hard candy person. So a lot of times I get hard candy, I'm like, eh. And if
Like
anyone
chocolate.
dare give me black licorice, that's ugh. Yeah, I'll gladly take money for that.
So would y'all have actually so any of y'all actually would have participated in this dentist's plan?
Probably
Well,
not.
probably.
It would depend.
Probably the candy that I didn't like. Yep.
Yeah.
Because you get
Basically.
$1 for every pound if you were
Hey,
a
a
dentist.
dollar went a long way in the 80s. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, you turn in the black licorice and the hard candy, and you can turn right around and buy more Reese's and Twix.
Yeah.
Hey, I like black licorice.
Actually, my grandfather really liked black licorice too.
I like
He
red
always took
I
all the
like
black
black
jelly
licorice.
beans.
Yeah, I never did. But I love Twix. It was like gold when I was a kid. If I got a Twix, that would be like, yay.
I like the old school peanut butter Twix back then because it felt like the
Yeah, they
best
were
of both worlds.
Yeah.
Like peanut
I like
butter
the
cups
peanut
and
butter
Twix.
Twix too. I remember that.
The new recipe isn't as good as the old one, but
Well, it really is.
I remember getting
I remember
pixie
when
sticks.
do you remember
long
when you
rope
used to buy
licorice.
when you used to be able to buy this box and it had was there a box and it was like a full of probably about 10 of them in it. It wasn't they were individual like 10 pieces, wrapped like that.
Right.
I
And
like
I remember that because
Ever
my
since
great
I was-
grandparents to buy that for me.
When I was a kid, like now, of course, there are many things you look around and you're like, that is some bullshit. I call bullshit on that. But when I was a kid, the thing I always felt that way about, I didn't quite use those words at that time, but I still call bullshit. The way they would call these pieces they gave out on Halloween, the way they would call them fun size. I was like, no, the full size bars are the fun size. This is the you're freaking kidding me size.
bite size.
That is what it is.
I'll give you this treat back.
Right.
Where's my trick?
Right. Is this a coupon for the actual candy bar?
Oh, I remember one year actually getting one of those coupon books one year in my sack, and I was like, "What the heck is this?"
Wow.
So that was one. Another one is they were doing the anti-Halloween protests.
Oh
They
yeah.
covered that several times about a lot of the religious folk, which appear later in this.
And
Yeah,
then
and
they
it was
called
like
the group
50s,
Har-
not the 80s though.
they called the group Harvest, right?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
remember what that meant?
Actually, you're going to see Harvest again in the sequel. But essentially, though, they were this religious group that was ultra religious, and they were very anti-Halloween, and they were doing protests.
Right.
They're talking about how it was driving these devil worshiper killings and all that stuff.
And again, I felt like one of the movie's failings was that woman was so over the top. She was so over the top.
I
She
think
would
she
have
was
been much. What's that?
I think she was actually perfect.
I don't know. I've seen some of these people. They are over the top.
I was going to say, I think she would have been
Yeah.
much more effective. I think she would have been much more effective and creepy if she said the exact same things delivered like a normal person. You know,
She was annoying.
she was annoying. Yes.
Yes.
I think she acted like one of the crazies of the times.
See, that's the thing. I think she would have been scarier if they didn't try to portray her as this wacko nut job. But
I call bullshit.
They basically had said,
Yeah.
well, because of the law, we need to make sure that we offer the other side of Halloween. And I'm like, my first thought was like, fairness doctrine. That's something that's dated.
And you could tell that reporter who was talking to her was having a hard time staying balanced. And
I think they also needed more anchor moments.
Oh yeah.
But see, back in those days, being fair and balanced wasn't just a phrase that was basically just lying to you. It was being fair and balanced actually meant the law said you had to give both sides equal say. So the news really kind of was forced to give both sides of every story.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there was
if it made sense to.
I feel like, and this is just my perspective. Other people may have a different perspective, but I know that the journalism has gone through phases, and so-called yellow journalism, where it is not fair and balanced, has popped up many times over the years. But
the fairness doctrine did not exist in a lot of yellow journalism.
No. But I do feel like for a time, at least for most of the 80s, they tried.
Yes.
I think there was an effort. I think that has largely gone by the wayside. But
they got rid of the fairness doctrine in the 90s.
Yeah. But anyway,
but
the reporters in this special, some of them had a harder time than others. The reporter that was interviewing that woman could barely mask her contempt for that. But then Frank was the worst one. Frank was a straight up prick to everyone he was talking to. And it was clear that he had nothing but contempt to most of the people he was talking to. But
and of course, the other story that goes with this, where they were talking more about these whole devil worshipping murders and stuff like that, which if you were growing up in the 80s and 90s, and Jake and I covered this a lot in our new show, Tabletop Horror, where we've covered where we're going to be covering quite a few films that actually took place during the Satanic Panic around gaming, like Mazes and Monsters, and this week, Skullduggery, all having to do with this particular brand. But yeah, I mean, I remember seeing a lot of these things about devil worshippers killing this, that, all throughout the 80s and 90s. They're sacrificing goats in the basement. They're listening to their metal records backwards, and it's causing them to kill people.
Not to mention the dramatic renderings they did of this kid that killed his parents. What was his name again? Was it Howard? Or am I just making that up? I don't know. But anyway, the kid that killed his parents, that put me in mind of the dramatic presentations of shows like Unsolved Mysteries, which I definitely was watching at the time this was set. Yeah. Although I feel like they did it a little better. But
and then finally you get to see the whole advertisement for the big old special that they're going to do right after the news, where you've got our asshole reporter as he investigates the murder house that they're talking about, the murders from, where these satanic murders took place in, and to see if it's really haunted, and that he's got some psychics that he's going to bring in on that to do this. So it kind of gives you a little bit of time to psych up. They give you a little bit of the dental one is obviously not really, there, but the others definitely. I do also like that as you go further on and it gets later, you see a little bit of a shift. Like you have the one adult 900 number that they advertise towards the end.
Oh, the Monsters one? Yeah.
Well,
I like the popcorn commercial that makes you think it's going to be for an adult porno or some such thing. And, oh, it's just popcorn.
they had one like adult pornographic type thing that they did.
Well, they did a strip club advertisement.
Yes, strip club one, yes.
Which I believe I remember that, like strip clubs being advertised at like, really? Really?
They used to do that here. I know that in Richmond for the Paper Moon.
Oh yeah. Paper Moon you would hear in
They used to do cigarette ads too.
Yeah. Definitely. Actually, there probably should have been more smoking ads in this, now that I think about it. But
I agree.
Yeah.
I know that there were smoking ads supposedly in between episodes of Dark Shadows, like in the 70s. So
yeah. But even in the late 80s, smoking was still a very common thing. Yeah.
Were there any news segments during the newscast itself that I missed that Joe felt like should be covered, or any of the commercials there?
The political one was kind of funny because, just the way they did it, it's like the ones that the Democrat is talking about, like, potential illegal things that the guy did, and it's like, I mean, it's a big problem if that actually happened. And the other guy is like, well, if you want to talk about all this petty stuff, I mean, what about his infidelity? And it's like,
he's like, we could talk about this. I don't really have the time for it, but if you want to. Which definitely that
talk about true infidelity.
Definitely that playbook is still alive and well. Unfortunately,
that is infidelity is something that all parties seem to have have their parts in.
Against.
I don't know. I can't not think about.
I mean, I like it as an example of just blow, like talk about something irrelevant, like kind of politics, to like deflect from like real stuff that matter.
Yeah,
if a person is going to do something that is mistrustworthy in his relationship, then you can actually put it on them in a political perspective. As kind of how the person is.
Well, and actually, I was going to say to that effect, one of my favorite quips from the 90s, from TV from the 90s, was actually a show that didn't last long, although it was huge for a minute. I don't know how many of y'all even remember Dharma and Greg. But I remember Greg was a politician. And Dharma was amorous. And they got caught, doing it in the car. And I remember the news report. And it's like, they were trying to figure out what party he belonged to. They're like, he was caught having sex with his own wife, so we know he's not a Democrat. But he was caught having sex, so we know he's not a Republican. I don't know. I always remember that and thought that was hilarious. And whenever they talk about infidelities in politics, I always think about that and I have to smile. But they will pick the most silly things to focus on to dodge issues. And I love the way he brushes them aside as, those are such minor things. And I'm like, you're talking about destroying the environment. F you hard.
If you think about it and what he was talking about, those would be minor things, like dumping toxic waste into our waterways. There's nothing bad that could come of that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't hurt anyone or anything. I mean, I get all my water from the city. I buy bottled water. It's not
I'm going in your neighbor's wife. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's understandable. It's all these things. But that's usual. That was a reflection of the politics of the time. There would be a lot of the one side usually was about the moral outrage, and one was usually about the environmental outrage. But I do think that the line was a lot blurrier back then in some ways. I mean, shoot, Bush Sr. was one of the ones who passed environmental regulation to help close the hole in the ozone layer, for goodness sakes. Now, admittedly, it had to open before he would do it, but I feel like these days they'd be like, that doesn't exist. Ignore that hole in the ozone. Ignore that.
I see nothing. I see nothing.
But yeah, I mean, I think the lines were kind of a little bit blurrier than they are now, but definitely it's kind of a reflection of things like that. Now both parties can be just as unfaithful as each other. They all sleep with everybody.
This is true. This is true. Yes.
It's just one of them sleeps with everybody and says, well, I'm doing it in the name of Jesus. Yeah, that's right.
Marvel Jesus. Let's put it that way.
Which one?
I'm just saying Marvel Jesus. Let's put it that way.
Oh, Marvel Jesus does it just for shits and giggles. I mean,
so in any case, let's get to the special itself.
Yes.
So they interview a lot of people, and they kind of kick around outside, and then they introduce our couple and their psychic cat.
Before he brings them on, he does those interviews with the people there. And I did like the one guy he tried to interview, and the guy gets this look on his face like, there were people killed in this house? It's like, what the hell?
People died in their house? Like, why do you think you're there?
Exactly. I was
I do like that they take a call and they're like, rock and roll.
That was painfully awkward, that scene. But yeah,
that was ad-libbed, I think.
Yeah. That gave me talk radio flashbacks.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty good representation of just like stupid villagers that you tend to see just everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on TV. Hello. It's like, hello. Are you going to say the thing? I'm on TV. It's like, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
Like, we had to do that like once or twice.
Yeah. Was it what movie? I mean, I know they've done that in multiple movies, but whatever.
Well, there were a couple of. Go ahead, Tammy.
It seems surprising that it seemed like they were gonna have all them people involved in it. It's like, really? There was a lot of people outside the place, and they were
there was going to be a crowd.
They were going to be part of it,
That's the idea, is that you got a crowd. Well, you think about it. If you got a big old special that's happening live and they're videotaping, you're going to have people that gather all around. And besides,
I understand that, but it seemed like it made it seem like they were going to be part of the ones going through the house.
Yeah.
A little bit,
It's like, you're really going to have that many people going through this house?
It is also interesting that the quote-unquote priest is not introduced right away.
No.
Like, you almost get the impression that the psychic couple didn't even know he'd be involved.
And it came in like right at the very end, right before they go in the house.
Yeah. Well, no, they were in the house when they called him on screen.
So, So let's talk about the psychic couple. So obviously they are the stand-ins for the Warrens. There is no doubt in my mind. It wasn't as clear to me the first time I watched this because I was kind of like, huh? But after the second time and I was more clear-headed watching it, I was like, oh God, yeah, this is... And just to add to the ridiculousness of it, because obviously they do consider them ridiculous, of the way they presented this, they have a cat that's psychic that they hunt ghosts with.
You've got Dr. Louis Berger. You've got Claire Berger, who's the clairvoyant. He's the technician, I guess you could say. And then the cat, they say the cat is so much more sensitive even than I am. And which is actually not the most ridiculous statement. Cats are known, animals are known for having an awareness of their environment that humans just don't have.
That
And
cat wanted to get the heck out of there. You could tell every
that
time.
cat knew that house was bad news. I mean, that cat was not stupid.
He literally put those headphones onto the cat as if the cat were listening to
Yeah.
so,
I did think that was hilarious.
That was kind of funny.
that part was funny, and
Yeah.
I'll probably say this later, but I think the cat's my favorite character.
Oh yeah, the cat was awesome, which made me very sad later on. And they called him Shadow, which is awesome too. That's great cat name, especially if you're a psychic cat.
And they do a commercial for their book.
Yeah.
In one of the commercial breaks, which is there.
Abortion? No. Abomination. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Right. And it was like they were. It was like one of their previous hauntings, I believe. It
was how the Warrens made their money. Usually was by selling books.
Yeah.
Actually, I watched the documentary on the Warrens, and Ed actually, he was an artist. He would take and before they investigated a haunting, he would draw or paint the house, and then Lorraine would walk up to the people's houses and introduce Ed's art piece as part of the conversation piece. It was almost like selling Bible, almost.
Yeah, they almost they at first did not make a lot of money, but then it was over time that it happened. I mean, shoot, Ed Warren was a bus driver during part of his time there. But that's a very interesting group. That one. I was listening to the last podcast on the left story that they managed to do an in-depth deep dive. They're a fun couple.
Oh yeah, I know. I have a 2-tape thing from Scimitar a video called Ghosts, Poltergeists, and Demons that has them going around to like the Borley Mansion and going to Edinburgh and things of that nature. Wouldn't mind it coming on DVD eventually, but yeah.
But then they introduce the priest after they go into the house, and he keeps getting at him for like to do an exorcism. And he's like, I can't do that without proof from the church. And
that's one thing I find fault with this. If he were an actual priest, which we find out that he's not eventually. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. But if he were an actual priest, I would think that he would go around and at least bless the house, bless each room or something like that. But they didn't even follow that. So
it is a bit surprising when you think about it. It is a bit surprising that Frank didn't push him to do that, because like he wanted a full-on exorcism because he thought it'd be better for ratings.
Yeah,
but what are you going to exercise the house? I mean, there's no demons in it yet.
Well, certainly, though, having the priest going around and blessing things would have at least given him something to do other than clutching his Bible, and So it is weird.
Burn some sage or something like that to make it look at least.
We had our friend who was a Episcopalian priest
right
do that and bless each room of the house because there's a room of the house that's haunted, and didn't work, but essentially part of it is they go in there and the cat takes off immediately upstairs and they're chasing the cat.
Yeah.
Like, he must sense the ghosts. I'm like, no, the cat got loose and he's running rampant around the house.
Well, first that was after Claire she was trying to get the read on the house, and Frank kept badgering her. Well, what do you feel? What do you feel? And she's like, I'm trying.
It takes me a minute.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "What do you feel?"
And then, of course, a little bit later, you realize that she needs the cat to sense shit before she even clairvoyance anything.
But actually, was it after they found the cat that they did the seance, or was it before?
I think it was before, because once the cat is found, like all hell breaks loose and they leave.
That's when they get the prank call. About
they
like,
heard the cat scream while they were trying to do the
Yeah.
seance. Yeah, but the machine, the equipment was destroyed first, and that's why the doctor is sitting there pouting and petulantly asking who's going to pay me the whole time they're trying to do the seance, and Frank was getting all annoyed with him. But yeah,
well, in truth, they didn't break it, but he was like, "Yeah, well, risks in the job."
Yeah, but they're so yeah, I guess that's one thing to mention is that once they get talked off the ledge about their missing cat, basically they go about trying, and they get out the equipment, and they manage to catch a, what do they call it? It was an EVP.
I love how they cut it off like immediately afterwards, so you can't really tell what's on it.
Right.
See, you hear it.
Yeah. Well, it definitely sounded like someone saying leave, but yeah. Yeah.
I didn't think it sounded like it the first time, but when he played it the second time, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like it to me after they told me what it was. But the thing that really bothered me, of course, was finding the cat dead, which pretty much was the end.
Not just dead. It was
splattered. Yeah.
Yeah, that was not lovely.
And they had to like apologize on air about accidentally showing it on the live broadcast and all that, which I thought was realistic, because if that did happen on the live news, they would be apologizing immediately.
Well, the cameraman was the asshole that time because he was telling him, "What are you doing filming that?"
Yeah. Don't show it! Oh my god! Exactly. And it felt like it was just from the cameraman being like, "What?" Like looking down, like not actually trying to get.
Oh yeah, he wasn't trying. He was just like, "Whoops,"
and whoops again. So it was like 2 whoopses.
That was pretty much enough for our Warrens stand-ins, because they didn't stay long after that.
Yeah.
And that was when he decided to go downstairs with the priest to the basement.
Well. I mean, no, he had been pushing for that. He had been pushing and pushing, and they were basically fed up with this shit at that point.
They were like, no, after that.
My biggest annoyance is this basement scene, because all he says is, "In the name of the Father." Oh, something happened, and he had to go check upstairs. Like, why couldn't you at least let him finish something? So that then to me it felt like they just wanted to get this film done and over with at that point.
And I will admit, I think they fumbled the ending a little bit. I've already mentioned my part about the epilogue, but the other thing is, well, honestly, I think Dustin, I think you signed on after that. The epilogue is they show a scene of the news a week later. And I'm like, if this is meant to be a recording, it's kind of messes up the illusion to have a recording from a week later.
To me, I think the whole of it was one of the killers, obviously, keeping record of the event. And if you look at the scene where you see them being executed by the killers after,
which, if you recognize,
I did like, it's like,
okay,
don't show my face.
Okay, that makes more sense, because that also explains them.
I don't think that part was on TV. Yeah,
that part. See, like I say, that's my thought, is that it was the killers.
Yeah,
and kind of their way of the trophy, which I believe it was. Those were the some of the Harvest members that were doing.
Yes, and that makes more sense. That helps make. That makes the ending work a lot better. But
which they were doing that too, because think of it this way: they're doing that as a way of trying to help their own cause by showing, look, more demonic murders happening, and they're also eliminating somebody who's doing something blasphemous. So it actually comes out to them; it's a win-win.
Right. Never mind what you're doing in service of, I will say though, I do that makes the ending work a lot better for me, and I like it. I like that description a little better, but I do still find it mildly disappointing. And I'm wondering, Dave, I wonder if this is part of your issue. I find it mildly disappointing to find out that it wasn't actually supernatural after all, that it was just these nut jobs perpetrating a hoax. And then creating the illusion that it was actually the news people who were behind the hoax, which is kind of crafty and fun. So I have mixed feelings about it, but it is mildly disappointing that it wasn't actually supernatural.
I agree. I would have loved to have had a supernatural angle in there and a what the fuck moment, instead of okay, let's tie it up in a little bow, and these are the people who are responsible, which it alludes that it was the harvest people. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, yeah, one of them was pictured; their face was shown, but. Like I say, that was another thing that made me laugh, even though I shouldn't. Towards the end, was when she's like, "No, don't show the face."
Right.
But yeah, there are parts of it that are mildly entertaining for me, and some of it looks really good as far as infomercials go.
And as I say, I understand that it's not for everybody in a lot of ways. So I've always been one to say, when it comes to films, that there is no such thing as a bad film, and there's no such thing as a film that's loved by everybody. There's no such thing as a perfect film, and there's no such thing as a bad film, because a perfect film would imply that it is perfect, as in everything is the top, so everybody would like it.
Terminator 2.
But there are people who do not like Terminator 2.
Well, those people are psychopaths.
And that is an opinion.
It's an okay movie. Perfect movie, hell no. But it's a good movie.
Okay.
And then there's, but then of course, like I say, and some movies might only have one person that likes it.
Right.
I mean, like I said, we've already shown.
Funny the killer thing.
There is actually on this channel I have heard things about what was that movie that we covered that Jake luckily got away from.
Sallow.
Not the time we covered it, because I don't know if anybody was talking about how much they loved it then, but I remember the first time this thing was covered, it was talked about how much they loved the film, and I'm like, but again, even Sallow, to me, so long as the art doesn't legitimately harm others in making it, so I don't consider snuff films art, because in my opinion, they're evil, they're killing people in reality. I don't consider things where they legitimately kill animals without any use, like Cannibal Holocaust. Those animals were actually killed and eaten by the people that were killing them. So that's one thing. But,
to be honest, the turtle was in fact dead before they actually were breaking its legs and stuff. So
but that's the thing is, at least it's not that, instead of like the ones where they're talking about crush films where they're like crushing kittens in real life.
Like in this one, if we had seen whatever happened to that cat play out on screen with that cute little cat, that would have absolutely changed my perception of the film quite a bit.
Well, the odds of them doing that, like for a film, the odds of them doing that in even a lot of the most extreme movies are
Yeah.
pretty low. Like,
Right.
because showing animal violence is something that
Yeah.
highly frowned on.
Hmm.
So if anything had like graphic violence towards an animal like that, like a pet kind of animal, I would have been really, really surprised.
Yeah.
So we can take some comfort in that.
So to me, at the end of it, I mean, it's okay to look at this movie and go, "Ew." It's okay to look at this movie and go, "I like it a lot." It's in my opinion, that's what makes movies art. That's what makes art because it's something that is different for everybody. So it's there are a lot of people who really love Warhol's art. There are those like me that said that makes no sense. It's worthless.
I guess in a sense you could call this almost like a mixtape.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of it is it's just that they thought of a creative way to present a story and piece it together. And again, I didn't get it as much the first time around. I just got hit in with more of the nostalgia. But the second time around, I could tell that there was a lot more to it than just, hey, let's do some nostalgic stuff. The way that they planted clues throughout, and the more I've watched it, the more I've picked up on certain segments, on certain things about the involvement that you get to hear and understand what's going to happen later in the movie as you watch. So to me, I think that that's kind of a cool thing. But again, definitely not for everybody. But let's move on into production. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this, and then some of the rest of y'all can definitely join in. So this was not just we're doing this in editor. This was very unique. The people who did this, and it was great that Vinegar Syndrome had all of those extras on there. They were talking about how they had to do it. I mean, they did this by literally taking it and then running it through. They literally recorded it on a TV, old school TV, with a videotape. And then they took that videotape and then they recorded over that videotape and then recorded over that videotape until we got the quality to legit look like it was taped. Because this literally was taped off of the TV. And I thought that was, I've never heard of somebody doing that before to get the effect. And that's a pretty cool effect, in my opinion. I even think they did something like where they filmed it on the TV itself for one of the takes to also muddy it up a little bit more. But what are y'all's thoughts about, like, as far as the production?
I mean, again, I thought they did a really good job of mimicking a tape from the era.
Like, it looks like, I mean, if it wasn't being watched like on a file, like, I think you could totally play the prank where you get someone to believe this was real.
There were VHS releases of this, so you could have watched it on a VHS.
If they really did what they say they did, then I'll give it definitely more credit than it appears to be, So as far as a production goes, it does look literally like it was found on like an old VHS tape. Now, I do know that you can take a program and make it look exactly the same way. But there are people who actually do know old school tricks on backing VHSs up against VHSs and recording stuff, images over other images.
And keep in mind, this was 2013 too.
That someone did, because this was done in 2013.
So,
as opposed to being in 1980, but who knows?
And editing software wasn't quite where it is now back then either. So, and this was done with a lower budget in mind. So there's a lot of coolness from this. I mean, shoot, there's a lot of people who even will still there's still some low budget artists that still film off of videotape just so they can say shot on video for their films. All right. Well, and I guess one other thing for the production. For those of you who have watched 80s commercials and local cable TV type stuff, did this come across as feeling like it was from the 80s?
Oh yeah.
Definitely worked for me.
I'm not sure because I know that Harvest group felt more like a 70s feel than an 80s.
Oh, there were definitely groups like that in the 80s and 90s. We had those on our we had some in our town.
I mean, if you went outside and just like walked 20 steps in any direction, you'd probably run into some group like that, honestly.
Well, they were. I felt like they hit their height around the mid 90s and then started to withdraw after that. Like I said, the Satanic Panic ended around the 90s, and that did it. But I tell you though, Dave, check out go to some YouTube and look at some old cable access commercials, and then come back and see what you think. Not for this, obviously.
Not that I remember, but our local stations didn't do any Halloween specials like that at all.
Man, y'all stations weren't that fun.
I just don't remember public access TV doing anything like that. So, it sounds like you had a fun town or a fun local thing. Because
well, technically Roanoke was our local, even though that was ways away from where we were.
Yeah.
Covington didn't have a TV station. We were too small.
I was going to say, I imagine there are relatively few people that use the term fun for that area, right?
Well, it just depends on your definition of fun.
I do remember going to Northridge and doing trick-or-treating inside the mall way before it shut down. So
malls. That's something that's
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there were commercials for a mall here.
From where I grew up in Illinois, I only got to go trick-or-treating once when I was pretty little. I tried to go again in my late teens. When I was in an undergrad, somebody's kids went and I got to go with them, and I think that was the only time I could really remember going trick-or-treating, that I was old enough for it. So for me, Halloween is kind of a thing I never got to experience in the way that it seems like everybody else did. And so stuff that involves Halloween and some of these traditions, like the specials and stuff, it's kind of an insight, I guess, into what everybody else's experience was like. So,
well, I know that a lot of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons would do Halloween specials, and Looney Tunes, and a lot of the cartoons of the 80s.
So we got about a half and half look at whether this was accurate or not to the time. How about the commercials? Did you feel like any of the commercials fit for the time?
A lot of various television shows would do some Halloween. Simpsons even did it with the Treehouse Horror stuff.
Pretty makeup.
They do it all the time.
To me.
So, well, with that music, the sad thing is they did a pretty good job of doing a lot of those campy commercials and the music. There's a YouTuber that I've watched occasionally, which he simultaneously annoys me because he sounds like Gilbert Gottfried, but he does these things called these commercial things, cursed commercials or something like that. And I do like watching him talk about these older commercials. And maybe that's why I feel the nostalgia more, is because I rewatch them occasionally. And gosh, the music, they got the music down for those old school commercials.
I know a friend of mine used to actually show me some of the old airline commercials from the 90s, and they did a couple of airline commercials for this too. I remember seeing one.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like that kind of experience where it felt light and airy, you know.
Oh, I do have a small PSA from the 80s here. Hold on.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die. Please.
Mario.
Wait, before?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, I guess.
I will say though, as far as the commercial content, I may be remembering somewhat wrong with because this was more years ago than I want to admit. But if we're talking accurate distribution and display of commercials, there probably should have been 2 or 3 more commercials for medicines or other drugs.
The toys. There should have been some toy commercials
with
too.
But like with a couple of medicine commercials that have like a 2-minute listing of disclaimers at the end.
No, in truth, a lot of that extra stuff didn't pass until the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, that's why I said I couldn't remember if that, because Lord knows once you get into the 90s, that becomes a dominant thing.
Now that one where they were talking about like the grease paint for the costumes, that's definitely one I would have seen.
Oh yeah.
So
that's the one that stood out to me the most too, because I used to watch like Nick Jr. when I was in elementary school, and that is the kind of like the commercials were just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the drug PSAs. Well, the drug PSAs could have been any time.
Well, yeah, but the 80s was definitely the tail end of the LSD commercials that you would get back in those days, you know.
I mean, the 80s is when they did "This Is Your Brain" on drugs.
Yeah. We also did we get because I feel like this campaign had already gotten well underway. Did we have anything on here? We didn't have anything that was an equivalent of the that take a bite out of crime thing, was there? Like, because I feel like that was becoming a really big thing around
Yeah,
there.
they had McGruff the Crime Dog a lot.
Yeah.
They're missing a Dare commercial.
Well, again, well, that's the whole
had their own
war on
version of
drugs
that, I
thing.
think.
But didn't they have a comparative organization? Because you notice no actual organizations are in these commercials. They're all Tom Store knockoffs. And there was one, I think, that was supposed to be a Dare knockoff. I just can't remember what it was called.
Are you talking about the cartoon All Stars Attack?
Oh, that's a classic. No, that was sponsored by Dare, if I remember correctly. That was
sponsored by Dare and sponsored by George and Barbara Bush.
Right. But that was one of the few things from that time period that I think fondly of, even though if I were to watch it now, I'd probably cringe for most of its runtime.
I really want to do that actually. Like I want to find that.
It's
I've been meaning to rewatch it for like 10 years.
It's on YouTube. It's fuzzy, but it's on YouTube.
Well, it's got to be fuzzy for the authentic experience.
Oops, sorry.
But yeah.
All right. So, you had something else to say, Dave, before we move on, or?
No, I was going to say let's move on to music. I don't think there was much.
Oh, we were talking about the music.
I think we covered that already, actually. Yeah.
Unless you had something else to say about it. All right, let's move on. So let's go with favorites. And if you, let's see, some of y'all are too young to really remember 80s like TV specials. So let's just say this. Let's talk about one, what was your favorite scene in this? And two, what was your favorite Halloween special as a kid? Like almost local level Halloween special, not big massive production thing. All right. Well, I guess we'll start with you, Dustin.
I don't think we really had a local Halloween special that I can think of.
Or one that wasn't like necessarily
I really liked the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown.
That would play a lot on local TV. I guess that's more what I'm thinking of. What would be like a Halloween special that would play on local TV? And that would definitely play on local TV.
That's a good point.
Favorite scene?
My favorite scene in this? It's kind of hard to pick. I think interviewing the bystanders at the beginning to kind of set the tone for this is a really like slapdash, like not very well planned kind of thing. It's just like these random guys that it's like, hey, you want to be on the news? Okay. Like they had the foresight they went far enough to like hire a fake priest, but they didn't do any of like the other due diligence. Like they didn't have the house like secure. They didn't have people like go in there and make sure it wasn't occupied. Like there were a lot of things like this could have been prevented, I think, if they had some kind of like security or done any real like solid planning. But it's just kind of, it's like, oh well, there's nothing in there, we don't need to worry about anything kind of attitude that Frank has. I think that kind of gets them all killed, really.
So is that your favorite scene?
That was a digression off of my favorite scene when they're just interviewing like the stupid people.
Oh, okay.
Like, people died in this house? It's like, bro, what?
Read the script.
It makes me laugh.
So how about you, Tammy? Did you have a favorite scene?
I'm not really sure of a favorite scene or anything because I said I didn't really get into it, so it's like I'm sorry, I just don't have anything to pick for a favorite.
Okay. Anything that amused you a little bit?
The one commercial with the infomercial for buying the rock band music.
Okay.
As it was going, if you were reading any of it, the names of some of the bands and stuff, like, okay, So
That's it. Well, hey. See, we can find a little bit of amusing out of anything.
I mean,
except for Sallow. Nothing amusing about Sallow.
It was. I guess the thing in a whole was somewhat amusing to me, but it wasn't something that I really got into. It was just, to me, it was just kind of like, this was supposed to be the movie. And I remember saying that to David. So
that's all right. Dave is going to get me back next week. So was there any type of Halloween special that you watched as a kid that would come on like a local station or old school TV doesn't have to be a local thing, but was there any type of Halloween special that you watched that you remembered as a kid?
Diego. Sorry. Trying to get the iPad away from the cat. He's trying to use it as a pillow. I think the only one that I actually remember for Halloween special, the sad thing that is that I remember it. I never really got into Charlie Brown, but I remember the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown thing.
Hey, it came on every year until Apple used their commercial mic to take it off of local TV.
Yep, I mean, I do remember that. And I think I remember some of the shows that were popular at the time. That episode would be on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Thing.
And that's also included in Halloween specials, like if there was like a particular TV special or something like that.
I think
there were some
when I watched Magnum PI was one of the ones I watched a lot. I think they did one. I think for Halloween, an episode. I'm pretty sure my mom's stupid shows did something for Halloween because she watched Dallas and Knots Landing and Falcon Crest and all that. And I'm pretty sure those did something.
All right. So, Dave, did you have a favorite scene from this or anything that amused you in this?
I think I'm going to have to go with whenever when the cat had the headphones on its ears. That is my favorite scene.
Here,
I did enjoy the very somber spin the bottle suicide drug PSA, because the dude came out all like sinister and stuff, and it was definitely something that would have been going on in the 80s. And as far as Halloween specials go, I'll mention two, but these are from like the 90s.
Oh, it doesn't have to be from the 80s. It's just like as a kid.
Okay, the Saved by the Bell, the Saved by the Bell episode when they went to a murder mystery thing. Not sure if you guys remember that episode where they were invited to a haunted house and everybody started disappearing. I seem to remember that one. And then Quantum Leap had an episode, season 3, episode 5, called The Boogeyman. And it aired on October 26, 1990, where Sam leaped into a gothic horror novelist. And it was just weird as all fuck. And it was like the only Halloween episode they ever had on the show. So.
Spooky. All right. So, Jake, first off, what was your favorite scene?
That's kind of tricky. There are a couple of different areas. Probably collectively, I would probably say the commercials, because I'm really having trouble pinpointing a specific scene or moment, honestly, but I like the overall feeling of this being, for me, it felt like a time capsule, and I appreciate that. And I think some of the particular commercials The one that is potentially a false note but amused the hell out of me was that popcorn commercial, because I'm like, yeah, it's a bit of a bait and switch there, not appropriate for a family. It's kind of fun, but
for kids.
yeah, exactly.
And was there a favorite Halloween special that you saw as a kid?
I cannot for the life of me remember anything that I would say was a local production that was worth remembering.
Or anything that was shown on TV, like Charlie Brown, Great Pumpkin.
If we're just talking Halloween specials, easily the Garfield Halloween special had to be my favorite. I loved that when I was a kid. I enjoyed It's a Great Pumpkin, but I've never been as big of a Charlie Brown person as some people. But I love the Garfield Halloween special.
Well, for me, I don't know why, but I find it amusing that scene after where they're reporting somberly on the missing persons thing after it's over, and then just the like whole like on to Christmas holidays.
Oh yeah, that was great.
But
the anchors were great too.
Yes.
And I would almost say their scenes would be up there too.
Oh, they were definitely one of the more enjoyable parts of this film. So as far as Halloween specials, I mean, I've seen like at least two of the ones that y'all were talking about, the Garfield and the Great Pumpkin. I saw. I also remember two as a kid that I know were distinctly from the 80s. The Grinch Halloween special, which really was disturbing as a kid when he opened up this like haunted thing and made the kid go in. It was freaky as all get out. And then there was the Raggedy Ann and Andy movie. That thing,
I remember that one.
Really creepy and kind of disturbing, especially the thing that was made from candy and wanted to eat her eyes out because it thought it was candy buttons on her eyes. And things like this you kind of remember as a kid. Now, I haven't seen that special since I was a kid, but that one sticks with me. I've seen the Grinch one since I was a kid, but I have not seen that one since I was a kid.
Oh, here's one. Casper's Halloween special. Does anyone remember that one?
Nope. I remember the Donald Duck one where you had the nephews. Of course, that predates the 80s by a good clip. Where you had the witch who enchanted his feet and led Donald to his death or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, they didn't pull as many punches.
Oh, I remember Bugs Bunny dressing up as a witch and ends up at the witch's house. And she's like, this witch is actually uglier than me,
Well, that was the Halloween special. I guess we'll get into into outros. So I will hand that back to Dave, and I guess we can start with Dustin, before you leave, I do have something to talk with you about after show.
Yeah, you just kind of jarred my memory. Disney used to do this thing called like Disney's Halloween Treat that I don't think I've seen it available in the version I remember like ever since the 90s. Because I remember they like edited it or something, or like cut parts out.
Well, Disney definitely used to do a little Halloween thing every year. So yeah, there was.
Yeah, that Donald Duck cartoon was part of that. Like Donald was basically like pranking the nephews and like not giving them candy. So the witch just sprayed his feet with stuff and made him dance. Nobody was killed, and it was rather tame, really. So just setting the record straight, defending the witch.
I prefer my memory of it, even though I do have the special on Blu-ray somewhere, or DVD somewhere.
Okay, I guess we're at that point, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on this Halloween special. But it is now time to tell you guys a little bit about ourselves and what we do. So, Dustin, if you'd like to start us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I collect horror movie stuff here in Milwaukee, and I have a YouTube channel for showing off my finds, which, every week I say, oh, we're working on putting more stuff out, but we're really meaning it this time. It's been a pretty bad year for collecting stuff, for me specifically. So there hasn't been a lot to upload, but I do have a lot of other stuff I can put up on there that I'm working on getting done. I also have an Instagram, the Crypto Horrors. Same name as my channel, where I show off the stuff I find the same way. But sometimes things are not. Sometimes there's not enough stuff to really justify making a video for. So I think I did a Cavity Colors shirt haul there a while ago. Actually, I'm not sure if I finished posting those pictures. Damn. But so just give me a follow on those places, and the more people I have subbed or following, the more I'll feel bad that I'm not making stuff and probably get off my butt and start doing it more regularly. You can also find me on Twitter as Cryptaxis, which I'd eventually like to shorten all my stuff to Cryptaxis. But for now, that's what we got.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake. I am the sometime co-host of SeptumSin versus World, where the Versus Awards for the year debuted last week. So if you haven't already, head on over and check that out. It'll be good times. And of course, I keep myself far too busy than I should. I wish there were more hours in the day, including a very lengthy trip yesterday that may have crippled my truck. Yay. But in addition to work and long trips, I do try to make time for viewing. If nothing else, try to watch stuff so I can join these fine folks for discussions each week. And yeah, that's all I'd say about that.
Righty, heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel and another one with David and talk with everybody about the movies and get their opinions. And I have my own collection, and it's interesting. Like I probably never would have watched the one we had tonight if it wasn't for coming on here. But and unfortunately, the summer is winding down, so that means no more car shows. Otherwise, that's what I've been doing all summer. So.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, heading over to Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm SeptumSin, SeptumSin versus the World. We do like our physical media here, and we have a channel where we do stuff like pickups and talk about new stuff. I have a weekly update where I update people on new anime releasing. But I also we also did the Versus Awards, and that's still up there. So if you didn't check it out to see who won, definitely check it out. Jake and I worked. Actually, it wasn't just Jake and I. A lot of people worked hard on this. I mean, me, Jake, Dave was involved. We have Cody. We had Joel Winecoop, Phil Herman. We had lots of people who were actually a lot of people in the small budget movie game were involved this year. So you should definitely take a look. There was a lot of work into it, and it's a long show, but that's how award shows go. But for those of you who want smaller bites, if you didn't catch my hint earlier in the in the episode, we have a new show that debuted last Friday called Tabletop Horror. It's a show where Jake and I, and sometimes a guest, Dave being sometimes on there, and I think Brittany was on there for one, where we talk about movies related to tabletop RPGs and LARPing RPGs. Any movie that's kind of got a direct link to those, we definitely cover. We talk about the history of the films, what they, how we like them, and how closely they related to either tabletop or LARPing. So you should check it out. We've got the Mazes and Monsters episode already out and up, but we are hitting some less tread ground as we go, and I think this week we'll be hitting one that fewer people have seen called Skullduggery. And of course, Dave, since you got next week's film, I'll leave that to you.
Alrighty. What was my choice, anyways? Oh yeah, that's right. I remember. So my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us for this fantabulous journey we've been having. But I do want to say something about another channel that we go on and cover different films on Sundays on Delusions of Grandeur, where I believe we have the next film we're going to be talking about is Casper.
I thought it was Killer Condoms.
Not on that channel.
Oh, wait, wrong channel. This channel. Never mind.
But yeah, Delusions of Grandeur will be covering Casper this coming Sunday, so definitely check that out. But I do some video pickups, and I did actually put out some pickups. I finally did some video pickup stuff for some of the stuff that I've picked up over the last 6 months. I kind of had a long period of time where I wasn't putting anything out there, and I swear I put out like 6 or 7 videos, so check those out. And I do some video reviews from time to time, so check out the channel. It's got a lot of cool stuff. Lately I've been streaming some gameplay on Resident Evil 2 and 3 because I'm going back and forth between the two. So if you want to check out some newbie gameplay on the games, because I've never played anything beyond the Origins collection, to be fair and honest, of the Resident Evil series. And thanks to Brandon over here, he ended up sending me for Christmas the whole series of films, or games. So now I'm starting to check some of that stuff out, and I forgot some of them are actually brand new, so I unpackaged them, and the plastic is sitting right here. But in any case, we did accomplish something. We finished a short film today that we started like some years back, and we were going to put in a zombie anthology for somebody else's anthology, but things didn't happen. Now it's going to show up in Tales of the Forgotten Part 2. So
good times.
Fun times. Definitely getting somewhere on the editing and that, and that's going to show up, and I'm going to have a scene with the devil that's going to show up too. So that's fun stuff. We're working my way to trying to complete these things with Brandon, hoping to at least complete the second feature.
Lord help us.
Hoping to complete the second feature before Brandon goes on vacation, if we can. But we'll see. It probably we'll probably get it almost finished, and then he'll have to zoom out. So we'll see. But baby steps. So but next week, as Brandon spoiled it already, Killer Des Condoms, a German comedy horror film that was picked up by Troy some years back, and got a very cool release from Vinegar Syndrome. I made sure I pre-ordered that baby.
They're not as creepy as Casper.
No, definitely not as creepy as Casper. No, sorry. But it's just definitely gonna elastically be a little bit entertaining. So, especially since I know I have the soundtrack around here somewhere. Probably.
Dave, I think that was a bit of a stretch.
Right. But in any case, don't lose your pants before you actually come and at least listen to us the next week. I think we'll have some good times. But on that note,
all right.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.